What's up? What's up? What's up, everybody? Welcome to the live stream event every Thursday. Typically, usually goes from 8:30 to 9 a.m., but today is an important episode. It's a special episode. So I appreciate you taking some time out in your morning, wherever in the world this catches you. I see a couple comments from some of the audience members. Patrick, thanks for commenting. John, thank you for commenting. You know, all the way from Denver, Minneapolis. You know, I got the Instagram live feed also plugged in just to kind of bring more awareness. And you know, I know there's a lot of creepers out there just kind of watching from afar, and you're not necessarily going to comment, which is fine. I get it. It's cool. And what was interesting that I found out is that I get a lot of audience members that tell me that they watch it with a class. So there's groups that will go into like a conference room, and there could be up to about 10, 15, sometimes 20 that are plugged in. And so I understand that you're not necessarily in a position where you can comment your state and where you're from. But if you are, comment. Derek, my man, thank you very much for hitting me up and let me know you're tuning in all the way from New York. And anyway, these classes, they congregate and they turn it on to their conference room, which is a complete compliment, you know, to my content here. And I'm glad that some way, somehow I've been able to connect with you. And today I'm going to share a tremendous amount of value for you to not only assist you with the topic that I outlined right below, but before I get into that, you know, everybody checking in, comment, let me know. Scott Sheedy, Novi, Michigan in the house. Matt, all the way from Sacktown. Thank you guys very much for checking in. Even everyone here on the IG feed, on the live stream, let me know. Scott Short, what up, boo-boo? I get hit up with that a lot often, or commonly is like, hey, what's up, boo-boo? You know, I think it's funny because it's almost like a signature. Javier, good morning, brother. Calling all the way in from Tustin. And, you know, I see you guys, man. I appreciate these DMs. As you guys already know, you guys probably already saw it on the channel cover before I hit the live stream. I got an event going on. This is my first guest speaker. I'm the actual premier speaker at an event. It's going to happen on Saturday the 8th in the city of Irvine, California. You know, I'm excited because you know, for those of you who've been following me since day one, you've seen the growth of the brand, and coming from where it started, getting to a point where I've been invited to become the actual speaker, the guest speaker. It's an honor, and I'm going to uphold to my obligation, my duty to make sure that I bring just straight fire to this event. So wherever you are in this beautiful country or this beautiful world, be sure that if you can't make it to the event, and seats are filling up fast, if you are in the local area of Irvine, California, Orange County, I got people driving from San Diego, people driving from LA just to come and see this event, which is, again, just salute to you because you're doing what it takes to get yourself to that next level. But if in the event you're not in the area, be sure that you check the YouTube and the Facebook for the live stream. I'll be sure to plug you guys in. And without further ado, let me just recap some of the content. Shayla, hey Shayla, I got your email. Thank you very much for that opportunity, and I'll definitely get back to you later on today. And everyone that's tuning in, I want to remind you guys what exactly we're going to cover today. You know, if you didn't get a chance to read the email or the notes, I'm going to cover 2 secrets that actually answer to the primary challenges that I see a lot of loan officers experiencing right now. And, you know, as I had mentioned before in some previous content, I was going to take a break. I was going to take a little time off from these live streams. But man, when you get into a habit, when you get into used to a process, you find yourself almost like wanting to continue that process, right? Like that consistency, that momentum. And for example, one of the things that I try and remain consistent with is my morning ritual, my morning routine. And I'm seeing a lot of comments from the audience members like, hey man, I just implemented a morning routine. Wow, total game changer. And I see a lot of other audience members saying, hey, I'm trying to create this morning routine and get it going because I see what it's done to your mindset, and I see what it's done to other people's mindset. And I want to definitely get on that level. And so if you're doing what it takes to get yourself into that mindset, you know, I salute you, because not too many people will actually take that step to plug themselves into that wavelength or that frequency or that level. And it really does all come back down to decision. You know, a lot of the content that I share, for example, online, what's up, Rosie? you know, at the end of the day, it's just noise, right? It's just sound. And as helpful as it may be to other audience members, at the end of the day, it's not really helpful unless you execute, unless you actually do it. And so I'm proud to see that a lot of people are taking these steps. I'm even more happier to see that some of the content that I share online has positively affected you in a way where it's changed the results that you have been trying to get. It's made your grind easier. It's giving you the results that you want. And so I want to keep that going. And so I've decided to do another live stream today. And I've actually extended it a full hour because these two challenges that us as loan officers are going through right now it's detrimental to our mindset. And it all starts with the power of your mind, right? If you guys read books, I don't know if you guys ever are into like Think and Grow Rich or Napoleon Hill, you know, all that is really just all based on mindset. And the power of a strong mindset is ridiculously strong. It just gives you this crazy advantage over everyone else, and it helps you. It genuinely helps you. But the question is, well, how do I create that mindset? I mean, do I read a Tony Robbins book? You know, do I have to meditate for 3 hours a day? In all reality, what it does take is just the decision to want it. Because when you decide to execute something, or when you decide to look for something, you begin the motion, right? And in order to even begin the motion, you need the energy. So you just need the influence. And so I hope the content today influences you to dig deep and find the strength to make the decision to improve yourself. And so I try and give these little gold nuggets along the content of the channel and the videos that I share to help you understand a different way on how to do the things that we all do every single day to try to get that result. And typically that result, we believe, is monetary gain. It's compensation. It's awards. It's, you know, getting a shout out from your VP or getting a shout out from your region and being high on that production chart, right? Because it's a blow to our ego when we see our names at the very bottom. And just like it's a blow to our ego when we go through, let's say, a couple days or a week or a couple weeks, or sometimes even in some cases, for some of you, even a full month, where you're not seeing the results that you're used to, that you want, right? And the reason why I think it's important to really identify that is because that is part of the answer, and that in itself lies the actual secret. And so I'm going to share with you two secrets that are going to address the two common questions, the very first or two common challenges that we're all facing right now, even myself. And challenge number one is, you know, as mentioned on the email, if you find yourself right now running into leads that you believe, you know, they don't qualify, that there's just no benefit, you know what I mean? They're not going to buy, right? Number one is we're all going through it. At the end of the day, we all have the same exact challenge. We all have this perception that there's just not enough benefit. But what's interesting is that you're going to find that benefit per se or value is subjective, right? So let me give you an example. So when we go through a particular process for so long, we get used to that process. And so we get kind of acquainted, and that becomes our comfort zone. And so when we come across, you know, let's say the first 6 months of this year, or first, let's say all of last year, and you came across these scenarios where you're able to provide value from, like, let's say a rate and term refinance, right? And these were times where you were able to take someone and really improve their payment, whether it's $100, a couple $100, or what have you. And now that's kind of changed. So the environment's changed, results changed, the wording of our pitches have changed. And so we're no longer able to say, hey, I could take your rate from here down to here. You know, it sounds more something like, okay, well, I can increase your payment by this much, or your rate by this much, and bring your payment down to only around here. And I want to tell you that the secret in reality, what it comes down to is your perception of it. Meaning when you think that you don't have benefit, when you believe that there's no value in the offer that you're providing, typically it's subjective, meaning it's you who believe that there's no benefit, right? And the reason for that is because when we engage with a prospect, keep in mind, these prospects are in that same mind state, right? So they're used to asking for things in a certain way. And so typically they've become used to asking for, hey, you know, what's your rate? Or, you know, what are your fees? What are your costs? And this begins the kind of the direction of that phone conversation to be just geared around rate and fees. And so it's not our fault if we kind of get lost within focusing just on rate and fees. But at the same time, we really need to understand the root of the problem. And so what I've found, in order to find the answer, is you have to actually start with the result. And so if the result that we're commonly facing is we're coming across leads with no benefits, we're coming across leads with little to no value, right? That's the result that we're coming across. So now we have to find the problem. And so in order to find the problem, you have to work backwards, right? And so then we find ourselves, okay, well, or how do I work backwards? So if I'm coming across a lot of leads that are saying that there's no benefit, no value, well, why? Why do they believe that? And what you're going to find is when you work backwards, you're going to find is because it comes through your tonality. It comes through your delivery. It comes through just the lack of being creative and actually wanting to find a solution or deliver a solution to them, because typically we get convinced that there's no value. And again, it's not your fault. It's because you're referencing your memory. We are in constant comparison mode. We do it all the time, whether we know it or not. Our subconscious mind is comparing things all the time. And so when we come across a lead, for example, that has only $50 in savings, we've already judged that scenario to where we look at it as like, oh man, this is a little benefit, because in your eyes, $50 may not be a lot of money. But who are you to say that that's not value or that's not a benefit to that person that you are helping? For all you know, that $50 is just what they need. But see, we believe it's not what they need because that's not what they asked for. And so what they're saying is, I need a lower rate. You know, and maybe you can only lower the rate by 1/8, or maybe you can't even lower the rate at all. You're actually increasing it. That in itself ingrains a belief pattern within you. And so when you don't have confidence in the product or the service that you're providing, it radiates through your tonality. You hear me say that all the time. And I can't stress how important it is to identify that, because if you're not sold or you're not confident on what you're delivering, on what you're giving, then I guarantee you it's going to come out through your tone. It's going to come out through your delivery, and your prospect's going to feel the exact same way. You see, the answer and the secret of it all is this, is number one, is you got to take a step back. You know, you of course reverse engineer and identify, okay, well, maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just the way I'm delivering it. But here's a hack, is that we have to understand the difference between product and offer. Make sense? So product is a 30-year fixed. Product is a rate and term refinance. Product is a cash out refi, right? These are products. A product could be, you know, a BMW, right? A product could be an iPhone. But an offer is the result. It's the benefit. It is the destination, right? So even though a product like a car, a luxury car, we don't buy the luxury car. We buy the offer that luxury car gives us. So we buy the result that luxury car gives us. Does that make sense? If you guys ever been at BMW is pretty basic. At the end of the day, it's really, really basic. But some of us love it because I personally love it because of the way it drives, the handling of it all. Plus, I believe it's sleek. See, there are people out there that can't stand BMWs. My wife can't stand BMWs. She hates BMWs. But that's her perspective. Does that make sense? So I guess where I'm getting at is when we try and deliver a service or deliver a message, and we're constantly getting caught up with the fact that they don't believe that there's any benefit, is because we're selling the product. We're not necessarily selling the features, the benefits, the offer, what it does for them. And if we can identify and distinguish the difference between a product and an offer, that gives us an advantage to now change our message in a way to where we have to become creative. We have to actually apply it and make it applicable to them. So if someone was selling me a car and they knew that my destination or my goal was to actually receive what the vehicle offers, which is great handling, sleek look. It's just me. It's my style, right? I wouldn't necessarily sell the product like, hey man, this BMW costs this much money and you can get it for this much per month, because that's product information. But if you were to, if the salesman were to flip it on me and say, oh man, you got to check out the way this drives. Have you ever cut corners on this car? Oh man, it's like butter. Oh, the way you feel, like you get this radiance of confidence when you're driving in this car because it's exclusive, right? Not everybody can even afford this type of car. Not everyone can drive this car. You are one that can. Does that make sense? So now that becomes the offer. That becomes the benefit of that particular product. Does that make sense? So an iPhone, for example, is a product, but no one actually really wants to buy a $1,200, $1,300 product. What they do is they actually buy the results. They buy what it offers. And typically, if you guys have an iPhone or whatever, you might feel a certain way, like, no, I'm Android for life. And that's cool. It's your perspective, right? So your product would be Android, but there's a reason why you buy into that particular product. Just like there's a reason why we buy into name brands. It's what it offers us in return. And typically what it offers us in return is a feeling. Does that make sense? So it's the result, it's the status, it's basically just the value that it provides us and ensures that it's applicable to what we want. And so let me use this for an example, because I hear too many times where like, oh man, these leads have no benefit. There's only $25, there's only $50 in savings. You see, when we're that focused on the kind of just the cover of it, that's just a shell. But when we dig deep and we start to figure out what it offers, we forget that what it offers is, in some cases, a payment deferral, that it offers an escrow refund, that it offers means to give cash to pay off some holiday debt that they're about to rack up. Does that make sense? So if you typically actually add up the amount of money, right? And you find out that they're going to skip a payment of $2,000. You're going to find out that they get maybe an escrow refund of another $2,000. That makes sense? In some cases, even if it's a rate and term, you could take that up to $1,999 back from escrow and still consider it a rate and term, can't you? So if you add all that up and you got $5,999, isn't that a lot of money? Like, regardless of your $25 monthly savings, your creativity of seeing it for what it is, not the product, not the rate only drops an eighth, not the payment only drops $25, but you see the result of what it offers. You can then identify and compare it to the alternative, and the alternative is to not do anything, to not get their hands on that $5,999, to not get because what you found was that maybe on their credit report, they owe $2,000 to Chase and $2,000 to Kohl's and maybe $1,000 here for whatever this debt is. And you find that's about $5,000 in debt, right? But would you see it in a way where you can ask them, you know what, man, there's $25 in monthly savings. All right, so maybe they're not gonna buy into that, but let me take a step back and get creative, because I already invested 30 minutes of my day. My time's valuable. How can I get creative here and figure out other ways to increase that $25? Because I understand that it's not just the rate. The rate is just the product. They don't just want a fixed program. They just want the offer. Does that make sense? And so if I ask them, well, hey, how much you sent on this Chase card? Or I sent, because the credit report is going to say like $20. And so, oh, you know what? On the Chase card, I think we sent about $200. Got it. Okay. And then on this Kohl's card, how much you sent? Oh, we're trying to pay it off, so we sent about $100. Got it. And then how much you sent on this other debt? Oh, I think we sent only like $50. Well, that's $350. Does that make sense? Their alternative is to pay $375 more than they needed to if they decided not to move. But when we take a step back and look at what we are actually offering them, whether they decide to use that surge of cash flow to pay off that debt, we are now delivering an offer, a benefit, a feature. Does that make sense? It's the byproduct of doing the service. We're not necessarily focused on, oh, I'm only lowering your rate an eighth, or, oh, I'm charging you $3,000 in closing costs, or, oh, I'm only lowering, you know what I mean? I'm only lowering your payment $25. You're missing out on a great ton of value that can actually increase your perceived benefit, or their perceived benefit from the transaction. But it all starts with how you look at it. Now, here's the bonus. is when you start changing the way you look at it in that way, you start getting super creative, right? Like let me give you an example. When I started this technique, I started digging deep, bro. Like I was going over the comments of the credit bureaus. Like how many of you guys even do that? How many of you guys even read the comments of the credit bureaus? Because we become so systematic. All we're looking for is the FICO score and the mortgage, right? And it's not your fault. It's because you might be in a state where you're kind of like done, right? Like you're just done with the process. You feel like like you're in a hamster wheel. It's like, oh no, here we go, another here you go, another lead with just $25 savings. Let me go and get this over real quick. Because we become so ingrained within this process where we're just like, let me get this out of the way. I'm looking for that $100 a month savings or plus, right? But that's us. That's us justifying whether or not it's benefit. It's us making the decision to not actually take the time to get creative and create value, create what it actually truly offers. And I promise you, if you just take those couple steps, you're going to find that you're going to get more return. You're going to get better results. More importantly, you're going to take the focus off the fact that the rate's only dropping an eighth of percent or a quarter percent. You're going to take the focus off the fact that the rate may be increasing. You're going to take the focus off of the fact that maybe they're going from 29 years to 30, right? Because that becomes concerns, doesn't it? So if you learn to use this hack and get creative and be like, hey, you know what? I had an idea. I want to run it by you. I was going through the credit report and you noticed one common comment from the credit bureaus. And they're saying that your credit card balance to max credit limit ratio is too high. And I found something. I did the math for you. I actually added up because the first payment on this loan, like let's say they're going to fund in December, it's not due until next year. That's powerful, isn't it? So the first payment's not going to be due until next year. It's going to be due February 1st. And then you're going to get your escrow refund probably around mid-February, right? Or end of February, or about 30 days after we close the loan. Then you're going to get about $1,900 back at the time of funding, depending on the loan amount, of course, right? Because sometimes, or program, because sometimes it can go all the way up to $1,999. And then you're going to find out like, oh, you know what? I did the math and it came out to about $6,000. And the reason why I wanted to run this idea by you is because if you didn't necessarily need the $6,000 to put in the bank, you can actually remove these comments from the credit bureaus. And based on my experience, you're not, because you won't have any debt, you're actually going to remove $350 in monthly payment savings or monthly payment obligations that you send per month and keep that in the bank. But more importantly, remove the comment from these credit bureaus that are weighing your FICO score down. Right now, you might be like, but D, what if they have a 720 FICO? So what? FICO goes all the way up to 850. They don't have an 850. They don't got a 780, right? Again, it's all in perspective. It's all in how you look at the message. So if you choose to look at the message in that way of like, oh man, what's your other choice? What's your alternative? Your alternative is to pay $350 more. Your alternative is to keep these negative comments on the credit bureaus. Your alternative is to not have an 850 FICO. Your alternative is to continue living check to check. Does that make sense? So when you look at it in that way, there comes this confidence that radiates within your message and thus puts you in position to actually deliver value. You're no longer delivering a product. You're not selling them a product or a 30-year fix or a rate and term, a refinance. You're not selling any of that. What you're selling is the result. You're selling the feeling. Does that make sense? We do a lot of things for feelings, don't we not? We look for relationships because we want a feeling. We drink coffee because we need a feeling. We listen to music because we're looking for feelings. So look at that. That's something psychological trick right there. All these people are looking for are feelings. They're not looking for the lowest rate. They're not looking for the lowest fees. That is what they say because that's all they know what to say. They don't speak our language. Does that make sense? And when we understand that those feelings can only be attained by the results, then we start shifting our focus to what truly matters, and it is the results. It is the offering of your product. I hope you really understand that. Comment in the notes. Let me know if that makes sense to you. Let me know. Rosie, appreciate you. Thank you very much for checking in. Glenn from ATL. Daniel, what up? Appreciate all you guys for commenting. Really absorb that message because understanding the difference between product and offer is huge because you're gonna come across people that are gonna tell you that there's no benefit, and if that happens, it's just a sign that you didn't craft your message in a way where they believed there was any benefit. Does that make sense? Let me go and bring this comment section so you guys can see. There you go. So I guess where I'm getting at is a lot of times it's the perception, right? But not only the perception of the prospect, their perceived value and the benefit, and they can only perceive it in the way that we let them perceive it. Just like ourselves, we can only perceive the benefit in what we're pitching if based on our decision to see it how we want to see it. And so I guess the real hack is just making the decision to look at it in a different way. And I know it seems so easy, right? Like, oh, D, that's all I got to do is decide. There's got to be more than that. You will be amazed how many people decide to look at things in a negative way. It blows my mind. And it's not, again, it's not your fault. A lot of times it could just very well be your surroundings. It could just very well be the dialogue that you're used to. And so this is why the morning routines are very helpful. This is why a morning ritual is very helpful to your mindset, to your inner dialogue, your confidence, your momentum, your creativity. Is really in all reality, it's because you have a couple hours in the morning to just be in your head, to just be you. It's silent. No one's awake. You know what I mean? I got 3 kids. I got a wife. No one's awake, right? Like, it's just me, and I'm focusing on treating myself to really assess my own self. And within that time frame, I'm actually getting to study where I can improve. And typically what I found is that there are a lot of areas that I can improve. And this becomes so helpful because what I used to do was just wake up and jump into work. I used to wake up and rush to go do something. I used to wake right up and check my phone for work emails. You know what I told an agent the other day? I said, hey man, remove your work emails from your phone. And that may not necessarily apply to everybody because you know, sometimes you may need your work emails by phone. But if you get in a state of mind where you're feeling burnt, you're feeling like there's just no end, you're feeling like there's just, you know, like you're in that hamster wheel, I invite you to adopt a morning ritual. Remove your work emails from your phone and take the morning to invest in yourself. And then you're gonna work your creativity muscles. You're gonna work your confidence muscles, right? You're gonna look at certain things like what you should be grateful for. You're gonna adopt a different way of looking at things. And it's not your fault if you don't see it that way now. It's just because you are wired to look at things in a difficult way, because that's just the way it is. You just wake up right to the grind. You wake up right to putting out fires. You wake up right to people's problems on social media. Does that make sense? But if you change that around and you actually look at things you should be grateful for, feed your brain with some hustle nutrition, like at Sales Remastered on YouTube and Facebook, you like that plug, and go engulf yourself with the content that you find at Sales Remastered on Facebook and YouTube or Instagram. You know, these memes. I mean, it could just be a simple quote, you know, but if you take the time to invest in yourself, I promise you the results will just radiate throughout your day. So I really hope that helps. And then just to make sure I'm covering all that, so don't qualify. Oh yes, so when we get into that train of that momentum where, you know, because the hardest thing to do right now is, if you're going through it, the hardest thing to do is to look at it positively, isn't it? Like when you're in that negative mind state and you are kind of just going through it, like you get it, right? Like you're just, you know, like the last thing you want to do is make another outbound call because you've been turned down like 30 times. So the hardest thing to do really is to turn things around, is to kind of dig back out and just kind of hit that reset, right? But I promise you, if you find enough time to invest in yourself, you'll find the ability to do the reset. But when you get into that momentum, you get into that process where you're just getting turned down, we find ourselves getting more panicked, don't we? We find ourselves getting in this mental state where we become aggressive, we become frustrated, and it starts to radiate throughout our tonality. But how it actually really affects us is we start judging. And how we judge is we start to pre-qualify people based on their last name, right? You get that Mr. Patel, like, oh man, here we go. This dude's gonna ask for a 2.25 and been around in the market for like 5 years. We are judging. Does that make sense? Or someone says, hey, what's your rate? We judge them like, dang, this is my 3rd time getting asked what my rate is. My rates are high. Is that what you want to hear? My rates are high. Right? But it's funny right now when you hear it out loud, but when you say it internally, it deflates and defeats your mindset. And so after going through it so many times, we then begin to judge the lead and quickly qualify the lead. And that's where we actually commit income suicide, right? We're killing our income that way. That's the bottom line, is because what you believe is helping you save time is actually killing your opportunity to gain time. And when I say gain time is when you look at the opposite side of that mind state, when you're at your peak, when you're at your optimum level, when you have that good feeling, that rush, that confidence, knowing that you got a fat pipeline, knowing that you got a fat paycheck coming up next, then that make you feel just, you just got that bravado with you. You got that extra swag, don't you? And the reason for that is because you have time right now, right? Like you're not necessarily stressed. You don't, you know what I mean? Like you could treat yourself like, all right, maybe I don't got to work 12 hours a day. Maybe I don't have to, offer or volunteer to sacrifice my Saturday and Sunday. Now I got time. So that actually gives you time, right? But in our thoughts, when we're in the heat of the moment, what we think is actually saving us time is actually pushing us further away from the end goal and that end result. Does that make sense? So we begin to judge, qualify, and start to quickly try and weed out. We actually are looking for reasons to get off the phone with that lead. Isn't that weird? But when we take a step back and we look at it, the only way we're going to make a sale is if we're on the phone with leads, right? But the longer you stay in that mindset and the longer you stay in that state of mind, the more you're going to want to refrain from doing the basic actions that are required in order to get what it is you're trying to get. And so if I were to tell you, well, the only solution for you to clear your mindset, to help you remove that fear, remove that aggression, that tension that you're feeling, is to produce. Right? That's it. It's just to produce some sales. And I promise you, when you see some sales, it's like, it's like that light at the end of the tunnel. But the key thing is, though, will you decide to do it? And that's where it becomes a challenge to actually turn things around back in your favor, is because you've been going through the grind. You've been feeling it. So my strongest recommendation is, if you're going through that right now, take some time to invest in yourself. Dig through the content that I already have here at Sales Remastered. Go through some of the topics. If you haven't subscribed already, do so now. Hit that bell so that you're able to see some of the titles that come up as I upload them. And I promise you, the return on investment is massive, because even if it's just that one little push from that one video that probably had nothing to do with sales, right? Because I do a lot of mindset and motivational information on there as well. But sometimes it's just that one thing that kind of puts everything in perspective. And then you find yourself like, oh yeah, it is up to me. Oh yeah, I don't need to wait for, the results to fall on my lap. Oh yeah, I do have an obligation to deliver because I don't have a plan B. I do have an obligation to make myself successful because no one else is going to do it for me. Oh yeah, I do have obligations to ensure that I need to follow up and follow through with, because if I don't, then I'm not going to get what it is I'm sacrificing my time for. I'm sacrificing my weekends for. The only reason why I believe you're in a position you're in right now, as opposed to working at Best Buy or as opposed to working some other 9-to-5 job, is because you were sold on what this job offered. The reason why you took the risk and did the 20 hours of NMLS training, the reason why you are taking the risk right now to have more than likely you have bare minimum wage, is because you see the upside in what this position offers. And that upside is to make more money than that minimum wage, isn't it? The reason why you go through this grind is because you know what this job offers, and it offers more compensation gain than if you work some 9-to-5 at some corporate office doing HR, right? Or doing some sort of operations role with no bonus and no commission. And so there's a reason, is because you're looking for that feeling. You're looking for that feeling of confidence and security. And I promise you, it all starts with just identifying what it is you want and knowing how to get there. Information and knowledge is ultimately going to become your vehicle. So you just need to use this info and knowledge as the vehicle to take you to where you want to go. So I hope that really helps. Comment, hit up the comment box. Let me know you guys are absorbing this information. Victor, very helpful, fired. Thank you, brother. Javier, very, very true. Thank you, bro. Mo, Robert, Appreciate the shout out, Kevin. Appreciate it, brother. Everyone on IG also comment. Let me know you guys are absorbing this information. Now, when we go into the second half, or at least the second topic that I also think is holding us back, I put that you know, because at the very beginning, like you're gonna come across leads that you believe don't qualify, and sometimes they genuinely don't qualify. There's some people that literally are walking right out of the bankruptcy court, or maybe they got liens on their title, so they genuinely don't qualify. And there's a super easy quick fix for that, and it's gonna blow your mind how easy it is. It's basically moving your declaration questions, you know, like have you had any bankruptcies in the last 7 years? You know, what you typically would ask usually at about 20 minutes, 30 minutes in. Find a way to move that in within your first 5 minutes. Right? And go to the key questions first. Like, hey, do you have any solar panel on the house? Okay, because that opens up the idea of, oh, do you have any solar panel liens? Do you have any seconds or equity lines or judgments on your title? Right? Your marital status. These are things that become red flags. And actually, that's the reason why they don't qualify, right? Like, when's the last time you looked at your credit report? Got it. And you find out that they looked at their credit report 2 months ago or 3 months ago. And then you ask why, and it's because they applied for a refinance and then they never did a refinance. Well, why didn't you do a refinance? Well, they couldn't qualify my income. If I found that out in the first 5 minutes, wouldn't that save me a bunch of time? Right? And as far because more than likely that person who's been declined and denied, they're not gonna tell you. They're gonna you know what I mean? They're gonna cooperate, and they're gonna give you these buy signs like, oh yeah, I'll send you all my information. Yeah, I can have it to you right away. And you're gonna be like, ooh. Oh yeah, I got them. I booked them. Well, the reason why they got all that information is because they've been trying, boo-boo. They've been trying for a minute now, and they got it like fast. And it's like, wow, man, I'm good, you know. But hey, to each his own, right? Like, don't get deflated and think that if you find someone who's complying with you and they're you know, they're giving you more cooperation means that they don't qualify. I'm not trying to say that at all. More than likely, it's probably because you're using the techniques here at Sales Remastered. So the second one is, you know, when you do finally find a lead, right? And you have these benefits that you're delivering, and you're getting caught up with the same objections over and over. And sometimes those objections could be very well like, you know what, sounds great and all, you could dramatically change my life, Daniel, but I'm just gonna go ahead and do this at the new year, or after the new year, or after the holidays, right? Because much like what we do, our prospects are literally the same way. They do the same things. And what they do is they just try to find reasons to push things off, right? And if you are self-aware enough to understand that you do that too, I do it too, I do it all the time. And it's just the instinct of procrastination. And there's a way to get around that. There's a way to also change the way they perceive the value and what it is you're offering. And that secret is, this again will blow your mind. The secret is sound. Does that make sense? So when you hear a good pitch, when your prospect hears a good pitch, or when they hear something that really sparks their interest, all it is sound, isn't it? It's not the words. It's not necessarily, you know, your body language. And that's why they said that, you know, there's this breakdown of a message, right? Like how a message is conveyed and perceived. And most of it had to do with tonality, right? It's because sound, it's the way it sounds. And that's why in the very first topic, I'd mentioned, you know, a lot of the benefit radiates through your tone. A lot of your confidence radiates through your tone. A lot of your aggression will also radiate through your tone. So there's two sides of that. But at the end of the day, it's just sound. It makes sense? So like the words that we say, if you really think about it, they're just vibration and air that are manipulated by our lips and our tongue and forced out. At the end of the day, it's just sound. And that's why, you know, I call it Sales Remastered, is because it's making noise in a different way. It's sound. And so let me give you an example, because there are sounds that influence us to act certain ways, don't it? Like we have certain sounds that we prefer, or music genres that put us in a state of mind. So we may have certain music that gets us amped up, like to do cardio or to work out. And then we have certain sounds that relax us. It influences a state. Does that make sense? So when we change our state, we usually look towards different sounds. And another way to look at it is when you hear, like the example of tonality, when you hear somebody with an aggressive tone, it changes your state to a defensive dialogue, doesn't it? So like when you hear someone say, hey, right, or they call your name in a specific tone, you can kind of get a sense of what kind of engagement that's going to be. You know you're going to be in trouble. You know you did something wrong. But if you hear the same exact words in a different manner, like, hey, Daniel, like, you could tell it's going to be a question, right? And what that does, ultimately what that is it's framing. It's pre-framing your perception radar, right? Or whatever you want to call it. And so how it translates is when we deliver a message or when we come across these objections, typically it's because they just don't like the sound that you're making. Weird, right? So like when we, like, for example, when we start our sales pitch, sometimes they don't hear the benefit, which is sound. They don't hear the benefit because they heard the initial sound, which was the price or the rate, before you actually went over the benefit. And typically that happens by you saying, hey, Jim, this is Daniel. I put the numbers together for you. You got a pen and paper? That sound actually pre-frames your engagement. It puts them in this defensive state. You might as well have said, hey, Jim, right? Like, oh, shit. But, you know, it's a little bit deep, but I want you to understand that because it's something that we can all control. And one of the key things that, you know, if you've seen the content that I share, I'm a big believer on actually pre-framing your sale. And a lot of the secrets that I use or the techniques that I use is the way I actually open up that conversation. And so for those of you watching who actually heard me pitch or in the office next to me, you know, because I know some of my teammates are here, you know, I originate to this day. So I'm still selling to this day. And that's probably what makes this content more valuable than the next is, and I'm not saying sales trainers are not valuable, you know, appreciate your sales trainer. Those guys go through the grind. Sales trainers are a must because they teach you the logistics. They teach you how to use the tools that we need to make the sale. Whereas I offer a different perspective here. I give you the tools that you could put into battle right now when you're in the battle, right? When you're in the trenches per se. And one of the things that I'm sure, you know, you hear on the content is the way I open up the pitch. It sounds a different way. It doesn't sound like, hey, Jim, this is Daniel. I put some information together. Do you have a pen and paper? Okay, I got option one. There's no lender fee. There's no cost. And it's a 30-year fix. It's at 5.75%. It's going to save you, blah, blah, blah. It's going to do this, blah, blah, blah. And so that sound, little did you know, it actually pre-framed your engagement. It actually, the reason why they don't hear the benefit, the reason why they push it out is because they muted out the rest of the sound. They're thinking while you're going over the benefits, they're thinking of how to get off the phone. They're thinking of how to get you to, because no one wants to be rude, right? So when they tell you like, oh, I'll just do this next year, they're not gonna do it next year, boo-boo. They're gonna do it with someone who knew how to make the sound better. They're gonna do it with a person like me who knew how to make noise in a different way, or a follower, or an audience member, a student at Sales Remastered who really understands these core concepts and implements them and has fun with it. Because these strategies that I'm telling you right now, the reason why they work is because it just sounds different. Right. And it sounds so different. It becomes covert. And when you're covert, meaning that you're smooth with it, you're not necessarily, you know, putting them on guard, but you're actually embedding the value within your delivery. It's the sounds that keep them connected to you. And it just like it's the sound that is going to make them react with urgency. And so if you're starting your pitch off in that way, where versus, let's use mine, for example, where you know, all the time I match their tone. So if you were on my team and you heard me pitch, I would sound like a schizophrenic because I have different tonalities. I have different sounds, and it all depends on who I'm talking to. Sometimes I'll sound like a valley girl, right? Like, yeah, oh yeah, for sure, totally, right? Like it's because the person I'm talking to sounds like that. So that's hack number one. But if you find someone who's speaking a little bit more aggressive, more monotone, more slow, then I'll match that and I'll sound more monotone and more slow. And the reason for that is because you're just making sound like them, which psychologically builds a bond because you're like them. People like people who are like them. You ever hear that? And so that's where the concept comes from. But besides that, besides the tone, how I open it up is different than most, where you may be saying like, hey, grab a pen and paper. I never say that, right? How I open up the pitch sounds a little something like this. Like, hey, Jim, this is Daniel. Hey, I was actually going to send out the disclosures to your email, and I'll do so right now. But I found something and I got an idea. I want to run it by you real quick. Get your feedback first, right? And the reason why that's effective is because let me give you an example. It's kind of like if a friend came up to you and said, "Oh, bro, did you hear this?" Or, "Hey, man, check this out." Like there's that sound that kind of pre-frames that engagement and makes you tune in a little bit more, don't it? Like you're almost anxious to hear what they have to say. So the same idea happens when you say, "Hey, man, I had an idea. I want to run it by you real quick. Get your feedback on it first before I send this out." That's how I start a pitch. And so covertly, I'm actually pitching them as I'm sharing my idea. And here's the fun fact is that I don't say options. I don't say, "Hey, I got option number 1." What I do say is like, "Hey, I got an idea. I want to run it by you." You see, and then what I do is I start with the end in mind. So in other words, I start with the end in mind, meaning that if I know that I'm going to pitch a service or offer, then there are only so many different objections I'm going to run into. So many objections you're going to run into. And those objections typically are, "Oh, the cost is too high," or, "Oh, how come there's fees," right? Or, "How come the savings are so low," or, "The rate's not low enough." And so I start with that end in mind. And then what happens is I start crafting the solution to it, and that's how I begin my pitch. So in other words, like, "Hey, Jim, I got an idea. I want to run it by you." Here's the thing, is I was looking at a couple figures and I added it up. And ultimately what I found out was, because when we do this refinance, there's a payment deferral. So for example, so long as we fund in the month of December, your first payment's not due until next year. Your first payment's actually not even due until February 1st. And so for January, you would actually defer a payment, which would keep $2,000 in your bank account. And then what I did was I also accounted for your escrow refund, and I would estimate you got about $2,000 coming your way. You're probably going to get that in your bank account by, let's say, end of January, so long as we fund in December. And so I did the math, and then I figured out, you probably get about $1,999 back from escrow. Does that make sense? So this is how you're pre-framing your call, where typically that information doesn't come out until the very end when you get objections. That's it. It's just a hack, right? And so ultimately what you're doing is you're embedding these benefits. You're giving it to them at their time where they're most tuned in and they're more likely to absorb that benefit rather than them being on guard because, mind you, they're just trying to hear your idea. And so now, just within that first sentence, I painted the picture of what it would be like to have a skip payment. I painted the picture of what it would be like to get $2,000 refunded back to them, or what it would be like to get $2,000. And so now they have $6,000 in cash. What do we do when we know cash is coming? Don't we spend it up? It's especially salesmen, right? It's just natural. And so when we come across these certain features or offers from the byproduct of that service, we start to account for it, right? Like, ooh, I could really use that $2,000. Ooh, I could use that $6,000. And we almost start sensing as if we had it. And that's why it's effective. And say, you know what, I had an idea. The reason why I added these up is because I noticed a couple comments from the credit bureaus when I was going through your credit report. And I noticed that the common comment was that your credit balance or to max credit limit are too high. The ratio is too high. And what they're referring to is this Chase card, this Kohl's card, and this, this Everbank or Interbank loan that you have. Just out of curiosity though, just so I can make a note here, how much do you send to your Chase card, right? Now I start framing why they need me before I go over any rate, fees, or costs, because I need to frame them. Again, it's all within the sound. Does that make sense? Are you guys getting it? Make some comments. Put up some notes in the comment section, man. This is fire, bro. Like you guys, I guarantee you're not getting this from anyone else within your circle. They probably know it, but they're not sharing it with you. I am. So leave some comments right now inside the comment section. Let me know this makes sense. Just give a shout out. Daniel Contreras, I appreciate you, brother. Devin, I appreciate the shout out. And ultimately, the reason why this works is because you're putting them in a state of mind. You're changing their state. Much like what we use music for to change our state, we can actually change the state of the people we engage with by the sounds we make, right? And we're doing it through tonality. We're doing it through the choice of words. We're actually feeding them first. And so when we put them in a state where they have the answer to the common objection of like, oh, how come there's no lender fee? Well, I'm sorry, how come there's no lender credit? Well, technically, the reason why I wanted to run this idea by you is because, there is no lender credit. But check this out, you're getting $6,000 as the byproduct. So if you wanted to justify the investment, technically you're getting 6 grand. So ultimately what you're getting is cash flow to wipe out the credit card payments. You're getting cash flow to remove $350 a month in savings, remove the comments, and get your FICO up to a higher level. Position yourself so that in 12 months, you'll have 6 months of living expenses in your bank, liquid. Position yourself to where in a year or 2 from now, I can take your term from the 30 down to a 20. Now I'm shedding 10 years off the life of your loan. 10 years is 120 payments. I did the math. That's over $240,000 in lesser savings. Now your focus is in a different state, right? You're thinking about things beyond, oh, I'm only lowering your rate 1/8 of a point, or actually I'm raising your rate, or oh, I'm only lowering your payment by 25 bucks. The dynamics of that conversation is putting them in a state where they're just like, oh yeah, oh yeah. And all you did was start with the end in mind. So if you already knew the objection is going to happen, all you got to do literally is just come up with the solution and open it up with the solution. So you're making noise in a different way. Does that make sense? The reason why that technique of hey Jim, this is Dan, I got an idea, I want to run it by you first. The only reason why I use that, and the reason why that's so effective, is because they're not on guard to absorb the rest of my message. The only reason why I don't announce the rate, fee, and cost or the logistics until the very end is because it is easier for them to digest, because they now look at that as the only way they can get the benefits, the features of what basically the offers of that product. And so they're willing to do that in order to secure all the benefits that they've already emotionally bought into. That's how you create urgency. So very, likely you're not going to come across the same objection of, oh, let me go and put this off until next year, because they're already bought in. They're bought in before they even ask the rate. You know how many times I make sales and I never even announce the rate? I've done sales. I've literally closed sales and where the person will call back an hour later, sometimes the next day, and be like, hey, you know what, D, you never told me the rate. Well, you never asked. And the reason why they never ask is because their focus is no longer on the cost of the rate. You see, the cost and the rate is the product. All I've done is distinguish the difference between a product and an offer. And I've made it sound so good that they already bought into it and they weren't concerned about the price and offer. That's some fire right there. So I really hope you guys enjoy that. That in itself, my God, I'm talking about, like, you want to remove yourself from having that sense of doubt. You want to remove that negative mind state. All you need to do is get the information. You just need the knowledge, don't you? You just need the information. And that's exactly what I provide, So if you haven't already checked out, there's going to be a link below this video to salesremastered.com. Go get a gander at the information that I have to share. If you think this free live content is powerful, if you think this can make difference in result, imagine what you could find within the course. So go to salesremastered.com. If you haven't downloaded a copy of the sales script to go a little bit more in depth with the lessons that I teach here, if you want a free sales script that's going to dismantle the guard of the prospects that you should be outbound dialing or cold calling, or the inbound leads that you're getting, you want to dismantle their guard and actually take full control of that conversation, I got a script for you. Go to salesremastered.com. At the very bottom of the website, it says sales script remastered. When you request it, be sure to use your personal email address, though. Don't use your work email. It's going to quarantine it. You're never going to find it. Use your personal email address, your home email, the email that you get on your phone, not your work email. Okay. And it's going to give you a sample of exactly what I'm talking about. But when you're ready, and when you're like, you know what, D, I just want the shortcut. I just want a fast track. I just want the exact information of how I can win this game. Then you have a chance to enroll into Sales Remastered University. You have a chance to enroll yourself into a course that is specifically designed for mortgage bankers. It is specifically designed for the challenges that you face. It is specifically designed to give you the information and the knowledge. And what did we learn about info and knowledge? Is it's the vehicle. The reason why people at our higher level is all because they have the right info and the knowledge. It's all because they know how to be at that higher level. Does that make sense? It's not just hard work. It's not just extra hours. It's not just Saturday and Sunday sacrificing. It's not just, oh man, if I just put 14 hours per day. You know, I was making great income as a loan officer before I got promoted as a sales manager, and I was doing it all within a 7 to 8 hour time frame. All I was doing is just being efficient with my time. And I figured out the only way to be efficient with my time is if I use the right info and use the right knowledge. And that's exactly what my course gives you, is it gives you the exact info and the exact knowledge. So if that info and that knowledge, if all it did was help you get 2 extra sales per week, would it be worth the investment? If all it did was help you get to that next tier, would it be worth the investment? Right? So it's dumbfounding how sometimes we can alternatively take a free ride. And why free ride, what I'm saying is the free content you find at Sales Remastered. Mind you, the reason why you're seeing a lot of that in my car is because it's just right off the tip. It's just, you know what I mean? It's not planned. It's not organized. It's not constructed in a way to deliver the most impact, although it does deliver a lot of impact. If you look at the notes, there are loan officers winning right now. So imagine what it'd feel like if you were actually invest and become a student within the course, and you got that opportunity today. So click the links below. Don't forget to like this video. If I've delivered any value, definitely share the video with your team, share it with another loan officer, share it with people around you and others that you want to climb with you. But more importantly, use this information so that you can get a couple extra sales, so that you can remove yourself from that negative mindset and turn the momentum back into your favor. You know, it all comes down to decision, and it all comes down to you making the choice of whether or not you want to change. And if you want to change, use the tools that I've outlined within this share, and I promise you, I will see you at the top. I appreciate you guys. You guys have a great day. Be blessed, and I'll see you guys on the next live stream.